Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to put together a guide to the Maven. The Maven was added in 3.13 and is one of the top endgame bosses in Path of Exile. In my opinion, and plenty of you will disagree with this sort of ordering, I believe that the Maven is slightly harder than the Cortex, significantly harder than Cyrus, Awakener of Worlds, and maybe about a smidgen easier than the Uber Elder encounter. But obviously people will have all sorts of differing orders that they put these fights in. However, the Maven is a boss that's got a lot of quite unique loot, and as a result tends to be pretty lucrative to run all through the league. Additionally, it's a fight that has a lot of complex mechanics, and it's one that people generally lose if they go into blind. So, let's start with a quick disclaimer. This is based on fighting the Maven solo. Several Path of Exile bosses have significant changes in group play. For example, Atsuri's Empowered Flame Blast, she'll fire off more Flame Blasts if you've got more players in the zone. I don't know if the Maven has mechanics like that. If you're going into it in a group, then just be aware that things may be a little bit different. Additionally, if you want to download my notes, they'll be on my blog, sirgog.com. So this is a many-phased boss. Those of you that have done the Uber Elder encounter before will be familiar with the concept of a phased fight where you're fighting two bosses and you can only hit one of them at any given time. The Maven is sort of like that, except only one of them is truly present all of the time. So you'll start out, you'll fight the Maven, and the Nucleus of the Maven will be firing off little bits of, running a little bit of interference with your fight. Then you'll fight the Nucleus of the Maven, and the Maven will just disappear for a while you do that. So you're going to alternate between these phases. One of the key things, though, is that the phase transitions in the Maven fight are complex and deadly, and mastering them is central to the encounter. Additionally, careful control of bad stuff on the ground matters a lot in this fight. So, character requirements quickly. The Maven has what I term soft enrage mechanics. This means that there's not a firm time limit. There's no equivalent to, say, Ober's Cursed Troves, 9 minutes. After 9 minutes, you immediately die if you're still in the instance mechanic. That's what you would term a hard enrage. This is a soft enrage. It's something that's sort of vaguely a bit like that, but without being quite as strict. So the longer the fight lasts, the more time you will need to deal with the Uber memory game, and the more void zones you'll have to deal with. I generally recommend on this fight that you want more than 1 million DPS to be able to beat the Maven. This is not an absolute requirement. It's not like you can't beat the fight with 600,000. Just that the fight becomes much harder with less than 1 million. There are a number of skills that the Maven has that no realistic character defense will allow you to survive. So I'm giving these names: Evacuate the Dancefloor, Memory Game, and Uber Laser. If you get hit by any of these, you are dead. There's basically no realistic way to survive, to tank those abilities. Additionally, the Maven has a couple of slams that are less dangerous than something like the Shaper Slam. So I'm giving them names: Slap and Yeet Balls of Fire. You can survive these on tankier than average characters. Squishy characters that are hit by them at full life will also survive, but you might need to remove an ignite to survive them. Additionally, resilience against freeze helps if your character makes mistakes during the Cascade of Pain ability. So let's just quickly go through the phase order. This is a high-level overview of the fight. Firstly, you're going to fight the Maven alone with no complications. Then you'll have a transition through Evacuate the Dancefloor. Then phase 2, you're fighting the Nucleus, which will be accompanied by minions. Those minions will be map bosses. You'll be doing this whilst you still have to deal with any vortexes that were dropped in part 1. Then you'll have a transition through the lesser memory game. Then in phase 3, you'll fight the Maven alone, and the Nucleus gains Uber Laser, which is easy to dodge and incredibly obvious, but is a one-shot mechanic. You'll transition again through Evacuate the Dancefloor into phase 4, where you'll fight the Nucleus and its minions while dodging vortexes that were dropped on the ground in part 3. Then you'll transition through the regular memory game to phases 5 and 6, which are a copy of 3 and 4 pretty much. Then you'll have a hard transition. This is through the Uber memory game, and we'll get to why that's so hard later. Then you'll have phase 7, which is the final phase. Here you'll be fighting the Maven with the arena hazards turned on, and the Maven will gain Yeet Balls of Fire. She might have had that in phase 5, I'm not sure, but it actually makes the fight easier because when the Maven's casting it, she's not using her other skills. And if this phase drags on too long, Uber Memory Game repeats. Having the Uber Memory Game repeat is really scary because the Uber Memory Game is definitely one of the hardest things in the Maven fight. So, Let's talk Evacuate the Dance Floor. Let's get the really simple but really important ability out of the way first. To end phases 1, 3, and 5, you first knock the Maven to 0 health. This causes her to flee and then causes the Nucleus of the Maven to slowly move to the center. When the Nucleus appears, it casts Evacuate the Dance Floor. You need to get off the dance floor. So you need to get out of the permanent areas of the arena. The Maven's arena, you'll see this, it's much easier to see this in practice than to describe it, but there's a couple of extra platforms off to the side that are not usually able to be stood on. During Evacuate the Dance Floor, you can stand on these platforms. Do not try to tank Evacuate the Dance Floor. Seriously, do not. There are basically no realistic character defenses that allow you to survive this much damage. Feel free to use all your Flame Dash charges here. You'll have a couple of second breather and you'll get them all back before you need them again. So let's talk about the Nucleus phases, the simple ones. These are simple unless you completely lost control of the void zones in the previous realm, or you get really unlucky with boss RNG. So the Nucleus will spawn random map bosses. They use their regular attacks and they will have stats that are based upon a tier 17 scoured map. It's actually quite a bit easier than a tier 16 map would be in practice, because normally you're at least elk a tier 16 map. So basically you're going to have 15% more hit points than a scoured tier 16 map, and about 4.5% more damage than a scoured tier 16 map, but that's basically less than one map mod would add to the difficulty. So the map bosses that you fight during the Nucleus aren't particularly scary. You'll have to fight these whilst also damaging the Nucleus of the Maven. And there's a couple of bosses you want to be scared of: Forking River boss, Aberath, and other bosses with scary area control skills. So some that come to mind, this is an incomplete list, the Reef boss, so that's the Brine King, and Katava are pretty scary as well. There's a really obvious laser that slowly rotates. You should try hard to avoid this, and honestly, I can avoid this thing, so you certainly can as well. Phases end when the Nucleus hits 2/3, 1/3, and 0 life. Be prepared to go straight into a memory game, quickly afterwards. This encounter is very strike skill friendly, as strikes are great at projecting full damage to 3+ targets at a time once you have endgame gear. Nucleus does have a lot of hit points, but it doesn't do anything really dangerous. These fights are a bit of a breather. They're a chance to regain flask charges in the middle of the fight if you need to, and so that can be something that can just buy you a little bit of time to calm your nerves as well, because the Maven phases are a little bit harder. Okay, so now let's move on to discussing the Maven phases. When you're fighting the Maven, the Nucleus will spit projectiles into the arena. Some of these do chip damage that you should endure and heal from. Others matter a bit more, and these are the ones that become void zones. I'm going to show video footage of these projectiles, and I'm going to show it twice. The first time at full speed, the second time much slower. One of his moves causes 3 projectiles to spawn and home in on you. These projectiles accelerate, and to the best of my knowledge, you cannot outrun them indefinitely by any means. You must let them strike you. When they strike you, they will detonate, and they will detonate into a puddle of sort of cosmic goo on the ground. This cosmic goo will slow you down, and it will deal damage over time. Okay, so that is the arena hazards that are put onto the arena during the Maven fight by the Nucleus. Now let's talk about the Maven skills herself. Cascade of Pain, Laser Rake, Slap, and Yeet Balls of Fire. So Cascade of Pain is her most impactful one. This has a vocal cue, and it will sound like a cascade of pain. You'll notice that when I show video footage of the fight, I really stuff this up badly, and there's a reason for that. I was blasting music while I was doing the Maven fight, and as a result, I was completely distracted, and I missed almost every one of these vocal cues. Now, that almost got me killed twice in this fight, especially right at the start, like I almost immediately get killed by it. And the simple solution here is don't play music. You do need to hear the audio cues from the Maven. Cascade starts fast after she begins the audio warning. When she announces Cascade, you need to drop everything and react, because this is going to be basically the Maven pointing at you and pretty much firing a machine gun of frostbolts at you. The correct reaction is to sidestep. Walk perpendicular to the Maven's location, not straight away from her. A move skill is an option, but it's an inferior option because and actually it's something I make a mistake of relying too much on move skills here, because you will be more able to control where your mouse is going to be immediately after sidestepping than you will be able to after you use a move skill. Now, there is absolutely no shame in logging out for Cascade of Pain if the Coil Beams checkmate you in phase 7, or if the Uber Laser checkmates you. I'll just show you what Uber Laser is. It doesn't get a slide because it's so harmless. So here's video footage now being spliced in of what the Uber Laser does. Void zones are really bad during Cascade of Pain as they slow you. You want to try to avoid dodging into them unless Cascade is nearly over. You'll learn this with practice. It's not the end of the world to duck into a void zone here, but you will want to get out of it really quickly. Lastly, projectiles are a little bit wider than you might think. It's really easy to get that wrong. Okay, so the next skill to talk about is the Laser Rake. So let's show footage of this. And this does damage, and I think it can also do elemental ailments in some situations. It's pretty scary, but it's also not going to kill you. Even if you're at the squishier end, this is the sort of thing that is mostly dangerous as chip damage. It's easy to see this in action and to explain its motion, but basically think a broken pair of kitchen tongs that don't quite meet in the middle. That's what this skill looks like. Always, always, always prioritize avoiding other skills over the Laser Rake. If you have to dodge into the Laser Rake to avoid another skill, just do it. If you have to dodge into the Laser Rake in order to get the balls into the right place, the exploding balls, then do that as well. A Life Flask will help you a lot here, as the damage is easily endured, but it's not zero. This Rake has a 12-second cooldown. Next, we've got Yeet Balls of Fire. Now, I kind of think that this only comes up in phase 7, but I could be wrong on that. It might be in phase 5 as well. This skill looks terrifying. It's a great ball of fire. It's huge and it screams, "I am a telegraphed one-shot, dodge me at all costs." This is not a telegraph one-shot that you need to dodge at all costs. With 75% fire resist, this skill hurts, but it is far from something that you must dodge. Dodge this if you can, endure it otherwise, and don't let it distract you so that something scarier can kill you. However, this is much worse if you are being hit by Coil Beams. We'll get to the Coil Beams in a sec. They're only present in phase 7 and they are really, really scary. It's also scary if you've been hit by the Laser Rake and that's sort of knocked you down a bit in health. It's also much worse if you're in a void zone taking damage. Any of these things can mitigate your ability to endure this attack. Next we have the slam that I call Slap. I believe that this comes online in phase 3, 5, and 7. I could be wrong, it may only be in 5 and 7. It looks like the whole circle is going to be a one-shot. This skill is not a one-shot, but it does freeze, and so you should be a little bit scared of it. You want to try and dodge this, but treat it like Yeet Balls of Fire. Dodge it if you can. Don't feel like it's a terrible mistake to get hit by it. And the other thing you can do is, if you're like me, you're someone that likes to use Steel Skin as a self-cast, then just self-cast and endure it, and you'll be fine. So this deals about 12,000 damage, split between the 3 elements, and also can ignite, shock, and freeze. In fact, it will always ignite, shock, and freeze. One thing that's important with the Slap, though, is that you cannot dodge or block it. Now, spell dodge is being mostly removed in 3.16, so that's not going to be a factor. But spell block is a common defensive layer. This will penetrate all of your block. Okay, memory game. The easiest way to show this is to demonstrate it. The memory game, the Maven sort of splits the arena into 3 pieces, and then she will light up those 3 pieces in an order. The first time you do the memory game, the lesser memory game, she will do 3 of them. So it can just be as simple as you go to the top, you go to the left, you go back to the top again. Or it might be the top, the left, then the right, or whatever. Then there's the harder versions where she will do 6 of them. So it might be top, left, right, left, right, left. Now, what you need to do here is step on the appropriate tiles in the correct order whilst under time pressure. There'll be an explosion that will start in the center. This will diffuse once you completely do the memory game successfully. So that's once you've stood on all of the appropriate tiles correctly. If you step onto the wrong tile, then the wave of force will expand quickly for a second or so, and you will basically lose 2 or 3 seconds. Now, if you lose your rhythm or forget what you need to do in this encounter, so if you get the order, then you need to log out immediately and you need to abuse the grace period. That is absolutely central because the explosion from the memory game is a one-shot. Again, it's one of those abilities that there is no realistic defense against in the game. It will absolutely wipe you out. The first time you do this, you'll have to do 3 tiles. The second time, 6 tiles. The third and subsequent times, it'll be 6 tiles, but you will also have to deal with coil beams. I term this the Uber memory game. So let's show some footage of this, including a couple of mistakes, one of which was deliberately made and one of which was just due to me playing really badly at the time, and give you a bit of a sense as to what the memory game looks like, both when you succeed and when you fail, and also how to recover when you have a real disaster. You'll see at one point I die whilst I'm running the memory game. I die to a coil beam during the Uber memory game. And then you'll see that when I come back into the Maven's arena, and this would be the same if I logged out, I will just abuse grace period so that when the explosion happens, I am not a valid target for it. So next we've got the coil beams. These are deadly arena hazards. These only exist in phase 7, including the memory game transition into phase 7. The damage from these only tickles, but these nuke your passive life recovery from orbit for a long time. Flasks still work, basically nothing else does. So if you get hit, you need to stop focusing on trying to hit the Maven, trying to hurt her. Until the debuff expires, you need to play bullet hell style gameplay. Everything is focused on dodging. You need to outmaneuver damage sources and do basically nothing else. Cascade of Pain is really dangerous while the coil beams are up. It's better to dodge the Cascade and take a tick from the beams, but ultimately neither of these is a good outcome. This is the hardest part of the fight for a reason, and ultimately what you want to do is to avoid both damage sources. But if you have to take one, take a tick from the coil beam. It's an absolutely monstrous mechanic for a couple of builds. I'm calling out Righteous Fire as an example here, but they're not the only one. Anyways, let's go through the entirety of a fight. This is not a clean fight. I've deliberately picked one that has a couple of mistakes in it to give you a bit of a sense as to what the encounter looks like when you do make some mistakes. And this is being done during 3.15 on a Forbidden Right Totems build. Have you got comments or questions? Fire away below. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there. May your Val Orbs have interesting results, and may you get Maven Orbs when you do this fight.